Hello dear students, as you know that we are trying to revise our science syllabus for the upcoming board examinations, and for the same we were discussing about the topic life processes. Till today we had already discussed that to sustain the life on a earth, all living organisms used to perform certain day-to-day activities which help them to sustain their life. So all such activities which help the living organism to sustain their life on earth are collectively known as life processes. Their examples are nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion, and so on. In the previous classes, we had discussed about the process of nutrition. In today's class, we will start to discuss about the process of respiration. Now, when we start to define the term respiration, we used to say it is a biochemical process. Always remember, it is a biochemical process. Why we are using the term biochemical? Because it takes place only inside the cells of our body. It only takes place inside the cells of living organisms, so-called biochemical. It never used to happen if we will place the glucose in an open air, so it will be oxidized and converted into CO2 or water. It only takes place when this glucose enters inside the cell of our body. So we used to say it is a biochemical process, and in this process mainly oxidation of nutrient. In previous lecture during the nutrition in organism, we had defined the term nutrient. Major types are carbohydrate, protein and fats. So the oxidation of the nutrient, mainly हम consider carbohydrate करेंगे यहाँ पर, used to take place, and due to this oxidation energy is released, and this energy is utilized in the metabolic activity. What does this metabolic activity means? It is the chemical reactions takes place inside the cells of our body, Now, when we start to discuss about the types of respiration, we used to say mainly of two types, aerobic respiration and anaerobic. If this oxidation is taking place by utilizing the molecular oxygen, we will say it is an example of aerobic respiration, and if it is taking place without utilizing the molecular oxygen, we will say it is an example of an anaerobic respiration. Now, in your NCERT textbook, equation is given, and this is most important for type 1 essay question, essay type 1 or essay type 2 question. 1 mark or 2 mark question can be formed on this equation, so you need to remember it. Now, what exactly happens when this glucose, the molecular formula is C6H12O6, which is a 6 carbon molecule. When this glucose enters inside the cytoplasm of our cell, it used to get converted into 3 carbon molecule, which is named as pyruvic acid or pyruvate. Now, there are 3 possibilities. If we will consider it in lower organisms like in yeast, then in lower organisms like yeast, anaerobic respiration used to take place without utilizing the molecular oxygen. In the absence of oxygen, this pyruvic acid used to get converted into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. So commonly it is also known as alcoholic fermentation. Commonly it is also known as alcoholic fermentation. Alcoholic fermentation. Now, if this pyruvic acid enters inside our muscle cells during the vigorous exercise, then in that process it used to form the 3-carbon molecule named as lactic acid, and this stage is known as, this process is known as lactic acid fermentation, which is also an example of anaerobic respiration. Now, in normal condition, this pyruvic acid used to get entered from the cytoplasm into the mitochondria of cell, and in the presence of oxygen, it used to get converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. During the oxidation of one molecule of glucose, 38 ATPs are formed. 38 ATP are formed. This energy is stored in the form of ATP inside our body. So you need to remember this reaction. Glucose will enter inside the cell. In the cytoplasm, it will get converted into pyruvic acid. In lower organisms like in yeast, it used to get converted into ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. In human body, in normal cells, it used to this pyruvic acid used to get entered inside the mitochondria of the cell, where it used to get converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. 38 ATP are formed during the oxidation of one molecule of glucose. During vigorous exercise inside the muscles, it used to get converted into lactic acid and energy without utilizing the molecular oxygen. So upper two examples, alcoholic fermentation and lactic fermentation, are an example of anaerobic respiration, whereas this is an example of aerobic respiration. Now, when we start to discuss about the process of respiration in humans, we used to say, to understand this process in depth, we need to understand the structure of human respiratory system and functioning mechanism of respiratory system. This structure is mainly divided into two parts, conduction part and respiratory part. In conduction part, movement of gases used to take place. In this part, movement of gases used to take place. That means that gas is moving from one part to another. It enters inside our body through nasal cavity, it reaches towards pharynx, then from pharynx it reaches towards larynx, then from larynx it reaches towards trachea. What is the difference between conduction part and respiration part? Inside the respiration part, in it, exchange of gases used to take place. Exchange of gases used to take place. How this exchange used to take place, we will understand in depth during the functioning mechanism. Now, the functioning mechanism is divided into 4 steps. It is breathing, exchange of gases, transportation of gases and cellular respiration. So we are discussing about the life process which is named as respiration. We used to say it is a biochemical reaction. Why it is a biochemical process? Because always used to take place inside the cells of living organism, inside the cells of our body only. Now, during this process, what happens? Oxidation of nutrient take place. Mainly this nutrient is carbohydrate, but it can also be protein or fats. During this oxidation, energy is released, and this energy is utilized by the cells in various chemical reactions named as metabolic activity, considered of two types, aerobic and anaerobic. Then in depth, when we start to discuss in detail about the respiration in human, we need to understand the structure of human respiratory system and functioning mechanism of human respiratory. Structure is divided into two parts, conduction part and respiratory part. When we used to discuss about the conduction part, we used to say gases are moving from one part to another. It enters inside our body through nasal cavity, reaches to pharynx, then to larynx, then to trachea. From trachea, it moves towards the respiratory part, which is named as lungs. What is the difference between conduction and respiratory part? Movement is taking place, but inside the respiratory part, exchange of gases used to take place. In functioning mechanism, we need to discuss about the 4 steps or 4 processes: breathing, exchange of gases, transportation of gases, and cellular respiration. Now, in the structure, we used to say in conduction part we will discuss about the nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx and trachea. In respiratory part we will discuss about the lung. So these are the openings of our nasal cavity. These are present on the outside. So we named them external nostril. It opens inside our buccal cavity in the form of internal nostril. So air used to enters from external nostril and reaches inside the internal nostril. From internal nostril, with the help of pharynx, it moves towards the trachea, which is also known as windpipe. So this is our trachea, which is also known as windpipe. Now, when enter inside the nasal cavity, this air may contain certain dust particle inside it or few pathogens. So inside the nasal cavity, hair and mucus are present, lubricative substance is present, which used to trace out these particles. So nasal cavity collect the air from environment and clean it. It clean the dust particle, clean the certain pathogens with the help of mucus. And due to the presence of this mucus, the lubrication or moistening of the air used to take place. It also helped to regulate the temperature of the air, because in winter session the atmospheric air used to have low temperature, and in summer session the atmospheric air used to have high temperature. But inside the nasal cavity, with the help of blood capillaries, this temperature is maintained as per our internal body temperature, which is 37 degrees centigrade. So we need to remember, inside the nasal cavity collect the air from the environment, clean it, moisten it and regulate the temperature of it, and along with it, it also used to gives us the sensation of smell. Then air reaches to the pharynx part. This pharynx carry the air from the internal nostril towards the trachea. Near to pharynx, 5 openings are present. How there are 5 openings? You need to remember it. One opening is present in the form of internal nostril. Then 2 openings used to come near to the pharynx from each ear in the form of eustachian tube. One opening is present near to the pharynx in the form of our food pipe, which is esophagus or food pipe, and one opening is present in the form of trachea or windpipe. So one windpipe, one food pipe, 2 eustachian tube and 1 internal nostril. 5 openings are present near to pharynx. Then the air reaches to the uppermost part of our windpipe, which is named as larynx or sound box. Why we used to say sound works? Because it help us to produce the sound. How it used to produce. In class 9th, you had studied that any vibrating body can produce the sound. Now, inside our larynx, these elastic cartilages are present. This elastic band-like structure are present. When we used to expire, expiration जब हम करते हैं, then vibration occurs in these cartilages and sound is produced. If we will do more forceful expiration, then the vibration will be increased and we will produce the sound with more intensity. So inside the larynx, we used to say it is also known as sound box. Opening of it, there is an opening. The opening of it is named as glottis. At the time of intake of food, it is covered by a cartilaginous flap-like structure which is known as epiglottis. So it is known as sound box. Opening of it is known as glottis, covered by epiglottis at the time of ingestion of food. Vocal cords are present in it. They vibrate during the expiration. Now, from the trachea, from the larynx, this air enters into the trachea. Inside the trachea, C-shaped cartilaginous rings are present. We can touch them. You can touch them. These are the cartilaginous rings. What they used to do? Now, if this is a tube-like structure, we can squeeze them. Okay? But if inside this tube a C-shaped cartilage is present, then it will prevent the collapsing. So, these cartilaginous rings prevent the collapsing of the trachea. So, trachea is also known as windpipe. Inside it, C-shaped cartilages are present which prevent the collapsing of the trachea, and then this trachea further on bifurcate. It used to get divided. This trachea used to get divided into right and left bronchi. It used to get divided into right and left bronchi, which respectively enters inside to right and left lung. Now, where our lungs are located, we need to remember there is a muscular partition is present inside our body named as diaphragm. In the upper part of it or upper side of it, thoracic cavity is present, and lower to the diaphragm, abdominal cavity is present. So our lungs are located in the thoracic cavity but towards the backward side. So lungs are paired organ present on the back side of thoracic cavity. Now if we will compare the size, then right lung is comparatively larger, as on our left side heart is present. Now as soon as this bronchi enters inside the lungs, they start to get divided into the branch-like structures, tree-like structures. Primary, it used to form the further branches, primary bronchiole, secondary bronchiole, tertiary bronchiole, then terminal bronchiole. Finally, they opens into a chamber-like structure which is named as alveolar sac, in which pouch-like structure alveoli are found. Now, these alveoli used to remain in contact with these alveoli used to remain in contact with blood capillaries for exchange of gases. Now, these alveoli increases the surface area. They used to increase the surface area inside lung. So 1 mark or 2 mark questions may come, that what is the function of alveoli? You need to answer. It is a pouch-like structure which used to increases the surface area inside the lungs, and it helps remain in contact with blood capillaries for the efficient exchange of gases. This is, we had already discussed all about the structure part of our human respiratory system. In our next class, we will start to discuss about the mechanism of the human respiratory system. Thank you.